Welcome to the Marquis Masters Podcast. I'm Ryan Estes, and today I'm sitting down with Dr. Nan Cowardin-Lee, organizational psychologist and workplace bullying strategist. Here's a number that should stop you cold. In 2014, just 27% of American workers said they'd been bullied on the job. Today, it's at 60%. That's not a workplace anymore. That's a battlefield. And here's the kicker. There's no real law in this country to protect you from it. So what do you do when the person making your life miserable is your own boss and HR isn't coming to the rescue? That's exactly what we're unpacking. You'll learn how to tell the difference between everyday conflict and genuine bullying, the surprise reason your best employees are the ones getting targeted, and the boundary-setting playbook that makes bullies back off for good. Whether you're a leader trying to build a kinder culture or someone quietly wondering, wait, why is this happening to me? This conversation is your wake-up call. And if you're hungry for more brilliant minds like Dr. Nan, MarquisWho'sWho.com is your backstage pass to the people shaping our world. Go get inspired and then come back and tell us we were right. And if this episode hit home, please leave us a review because every star you give helps one more bullied worker find their way out of the fight and into the light. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dr. Nan as much as I did.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nan Cowardin-Lee. I have a PhD in organizational psychology, and I am a workplace bullying strategist.
Dr. Nan, welcome to the Marquis Masters Podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you because I think we're going to talk about a subject that maybe everybody can relate to. And this is workplace bullying. Because you happen to be, alongside an author and a PhD, a workplace bullying strategist. So please give us an introduction to your work.
I experienced workplace bullying around 2000, and that was a sort of a dirty secret in the workplace at the time. Since then, it's become very well known. And I looked up some stats to back myself up, and in 2014, the Workplace Bullying Institute survey showed that 27% of American workers had experienced workplace bullying. That was 14 years after I experienced it. And you didn't talk about it then because it was like a death knell to your career. In 2024, the survey showed that 32% of people had experienced it. And recently, a toxic boss survey produced in May 2026 showed that 60% of people in the workplace are experiencing it. Now everybody's talking about it.
What I do is I have been supporting people who have gone through the process. It's not something you go through quickly.
There is residual damage that happens from being bullied by workplace bullies. And I also work for legislation, and I have resilience courses that I'm teaching because there is no adequate law against workplace bullying in the United States at this time.
Incredible. And let's take this a little bit deeper. Now, I can really relate to this because I kind of came into my professional life looking for mentors, looking for people to admire. And unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of positive examples, but I had a whole bunch of negative examples. So, I think workplace bullying is probably a spectrum, and being a very sensitive person, I'm very conscious of that spectrum. So give us maybe some examples of what people are kind of suffering through and they're dealing with when it comes to workplace bullying.
Well, you're right, Ryan. It is a spectrum, and it goes from, I think, people who make mistakes when they're bullying people and they don't realize that they're doing it, to incivility, all the way up to what they call the dark triad, where people are very manipulative and they are actually out to cause great harm to you because of their power status, right? So people do experience this on the spectrum, and they experience the damage on the spectrum as well. And like you said, if you're a sensitive person or you're neurodivergent, you're probably going to pick this up much more quickly, and people will go after you. So there's an increase in what I call mobbing. And in the Europe, mobbing is what they use for the term workplace bullying. But in the United States, we use that term as a group action. And there's a lot more of that happening. If you spend any time on Reddit, they have a workplace bullying feed. You'll see that that is what people are complaining about more and more, is the group action that's happening.
Yeah, mobbing. That's
Yeah,
a great
mobbing.
word, a great and terrible word.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Because it attacks your identity. That's really what people do. They start making fun of you. They'll start with incivility. That's like the testing ground for whether you're going to push back or take it or not. And then it escalates from there, right? Where people are now talking about you behind your back, or they're sabotaging your work product, or maybe the boss is getting frustrated and he yells at you a lot, he or she. because women are bullies also. And it increases because what happens is we have this amygdala that starts being put forced open all the time because we are attuned to danger. That's our evolutionary status, right? As we were developing, we, especially in Africa, when we come out of the jungle into the plains, we look out and see, is this group over here going to kill me, or is it safe? Can I pass by them safely? So we're attuned to that. And then what happens is when somebody comes along and they're poking you or they're knocking your papers off your desk or they're screaming at you, your amygdala goes off, right?
Yeah.
The problem with workplace bullying is like it's being, you're like trapped at work. You can't leave really unless you quit. And as this goes on day after day, hour after hour, you get more and more stressed. And after a while, your amygdala does not close down. So you can't even sleep well at night because the cortisol that is rushing through your body never goes down. And you start worrying about yourself because it is an identity thing. So in my case, and this is common, I thought of myself as a really great worker. I had come out of being a reentry student and I had graduated cum laude. And suddenly I couldn't do a job, and suddenly somebody was upset with my work product, and somebody, and I had to work long hours into the night to get things done. And it was not how I had experienced myself before. And
Yeah.
that's what happens to pretty much everybody who goes through this.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about it kind of like evolutionary biology,
Hmm.
because ultimately we're tribal creatures, and
Yes.
the status within the tribe is very, very important. And for most of us, like what we do is kind of defines who we are. So if you feel like you're losing status within your tribe, it can be catastrophic. It can be absolutely catastrophic, because we really lean on these identities to kind of give us some shape, give us some form, and a lot of times it comes out subtles. It's interesting, and because we have a lot of different communication tools now as well. A lot of people are working from home, so you have email and you have Slack and you have these different kind of platforms where we're communicating with work. And I mean, even for me, just very subtle, what feels like maybe a temperament or things like that will kind of could derail my entire afternoon you know so kind of when I'm working with my staff, a lot of times I try and like instill some best practices, but I also begin with kind of uh, a mandate that you assume positive intent, because maybe there's some misplaced emotions sometimes. Some people are very short in online communication. So maybe if someone's kind of thinking that they're being victimized by workplace bullying, where's a good place to start to really kind of validate those emotions?
Well, what we do recommend in the advocacy world is that people document this because really workplace bullying is a pattern of behavior that goes on for a period of time. It has a duration and it also has an escalation to it. So the end result, of course, is pushing you out of the workplace, right? But that is the end process of people talking about you behind your back and negative communication and going on among all of the workers, and then the creation of a hostile work environment. The problem is most workers think, oh, well, I'll just go to HR, like HR is mommy and mommy's going to fix this, right? But that's not what happens. HR is there to protect the workplace and to protect management from lawsuits and problems. And what happens is that most people who go to complain end up being labeled the problem and pushed out.
Yeah.
Um, that's why people like me exist, and there are more and more people starting to speak up and help workers that are going through this particular process because it does take support. It causes trauma. You didn't cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. And that's difficult for people who feel like they've always been in control and good at their jobs to accept that that is what's going on with them.
Have you ever wondered how some people's stories live on, not just through their work, but through history itself? For nearly 130 years, Marquis Who's Who has been documenting the lives of leaders, innovators, and changemakers across every profession. From CEOs and scientists to artists and educators, Marquis has captured the stories behind success, the people who define our times. Being listed in Marquee Who's Who isn't just recognition, it's taking control of your personal brand and using it to create a meaningful and impactful legacy. It's a record of your life's work, preserved, published, and accessible to generations who will study, research, and be inspired by your contribution. If you've built something meaningful and you've made an impact in your field or community, this is how you ensure your story is told and your personal brand is maintained accurately with integrity. Visit marquiswhoswho.com to learn more about how you or someone you admire can be featured, because history remembers those who take the time to record it. I mean, Dr. Nan, I'm going to put you on speed dial. I mean, if I come back to the office and everyone's eating Chipotle and I'll be like, "Oh, you guys got Chipotle? You didn't invite me?" I'm like, "Dr. Nan, I'm getting bullied." But again, I'm very sensitive, and there's probably a difference too between like what's going on amongst coworkers. A lot of times you can kind of just maybe open your mouth and solve your own problems. If there's kind of like, this group mobbing, then it's probably a different issue. But what happens when it's like your direct report? What happens when it's your boss that's kind of instigating some of this negative behavior?
Well, what happens is most people take it on themselves because they go, okay, I'm not policing this person who I'm supposed to be working with in a collaborative manner, and they're saying I'm not supporting them, right? So, of course, all your bells and whistles start going off. How do I fix this?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can't fix it a lot of times. That's the problem. But then people are always afraid to leave because, of course, there's the financial issue and there's the retaliation issue. Even if you leave and try to talk to somebody about this or bring an action, you can be retaliated against. Even though that's against the law, it doesn't mean that people are not going to use that as a way to stop you from ever working again. In fact, that's what happened to me. I was retaliated against for 9 years, and that's how I got my PhD. So there was an upside to that. But, you know, um, it's a difficult time, right? Because we really depend on our jobs to keep us going and to support our families and to plan for the future. And when that's taken away from you and you have people ghosting you at every interview, you wonder, how am I going to get through this? And everybody goes through that. How am I going to get through this? That's why there are people like me out there trying to support people who are going through this. There are steps. The book I wrote, 10 Steps to Overcome Workplace Bullying from Recognition to Resilience, talks about the pattern of behavior as it affects the target of the bully and what they need to do next and what comes next. Sometimes these steps all coalesce together, especially in the beginning, but as you start going through the process, you need to change and entertain different ways of being so you can overcome the bullying.
You bet. And let's kind of underline that. Your book, 10 Steps to Overcome Workplace Bullying from Recognition to Resilience. I would love to know, like, who was this written for? Who would be the ideal candidate to read this book?
Well, I think the ideal candidate is definitely the person who's being bullied because it gives them instructions on what to expect, how to actually know you're being bullied. Because despite the fact that people know more about it today, that's still one of the questions that I see all the time. Is this really a toxic workplace? Is this really me, or is bullying happening to me? It starts with, here's how you can recognize whether you're being bullied or not. And especially with narcissists, I say you don't need an assessment. All you need to know is if they self reflect. I mean, if you say something to them like, every time you do this, I feel this, and they say, well, that's your fault, then you know you're dealing with a real problem person, right?
Yeah. And that might be hopeless, right? I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
unfortunately, I'm reminded of a conversation I had the other day. Can I tell a little story?
Oh, please.
It's not workplace bullying, but maybe I'm just using it to highlight my sensitivity. So anyway, I was at a dinner party, and someone was like, "Do you know how big Nikola Jokic's shoe size is?" We were watching the Nuggets game, big basketball fan. And I was like, "I have no idea." And they're like, "Size," or no, I said 27. And they're like, "Oh, no, it's size 20, but that's pretty big." I was like, "Yeah, it's big." And then I went on to say, like, I said 27 because I once went to Ross with my son, and at the end of the shoe aisle, there's always these gigantic shoes, and we saw a size 27 sneaker. Whatever, silly story. Well, this gal at the dinner party was like, she's like, I always end things with 7 when I'm exaggerating, like 7 or 17 or 27. And I just felt like she was like kind of alphaing me in a way, or bullying perhaps. And so my tendency, I was like, "Are you implying that I was exaggerating my story?" And she got bright red and like really upset and didn't talk to me for the rest of the evening. So Again, this is very subtle, but this is the kind of thing that happens, I think, a lot of times in the workplace is you have like cliques start to form and people go get lunches. You start to feel excluded. You start to feel a certain way. It doesn't necessarily mean it's real though. So how do you kind of get to the bottom of like, are you being like Ryan? Are you being a little oversensitive? Maybe you should try exerting yourself into the group a little bit more. What kind of proactive things can people take on if it's not kind of like a psychopathic narcissist? Good luck with that, you know. But if it's just maybe a normal person and maybe you just need to kind of read the room a little bit better, maybe.
Well, Ryan, I think the issue is that we can't really tell in the beginning if somebody's testing our boundaries or not. Like it could be totally innocent, like what you're talking about. The woman got red, she got embarrassed, you pushed back a little bit, and she recognized that maybe her question wasn't quite appropriate. But bullies start out with language games all the time. They find ways to make you feel uncomfortable. That's the point. That's the testing point, right? And that's why I am developing this resilience course about boundaries because I think we in general, people who are try to be accommodating, people who are sensitive, people um, who feel like they really need to respond to somebody when they don't, need to understand that it isn't all about people pleasing. What's going on out there is a test. What's going on out there is uh, what can I pull on you next to make you feel uncomfortable? And then, boy, I feel good about that because I'm more powerful than you, right?
Yeah.
So really, it's more about learning how to be assertive in a way that tells somebody that you have boundaries and that they've crossed them and that they're not going to be able to do that again.
Yeah. For people that are kind of being victimized a little bit, are there
Mhm.
different tactics for men and women? Because traditionally, you know, men are rewarded in the workplace for being assertive, for being aggressive, for being direct. Sometimes, to the chagrin of their coworkers. Is there different tactics and techniques for men and women?
Well, I think when it comes to men and women, men talk over women a lot, and that is a problem, especially if you're more like an alpha female and you really want to assert yourself and grow. You're going to have to learn how to deal with men. So, you know, a lot of women use the phrases like, well, you're talking over me, or I'm speaking now. Kamala Harris used that, right? I'm speaking now to just let people know there's a boundary there. And sometimes you have to repeat that over and over again because if a person is aggressive at all, they will ignore it. So that is the point of learning resilience to learn what you need to develop to be confident and assured and to know where your comments are coming from so you can push back over and over again. As I tell people, it's not the first pushback that matters, it's what goes on after that that really matters. Because a bully, someone who's really aggressive, someone who feels like they need power, will keep pushing back at you.
Yeah.
And if you keep coming back with the same kind of response over and over again, they'll get tired after a while and leave you alone.
Yeah. Do you think it's best to kind of address it when it happens in the group? You know, and kind of my example, I think probably I embarrassed her in front of like her friends and my friends, which might not have been the right place to do it. However, it did get the end result that I was looking for. So should you address it in the group as it happens and then maybe it pull aside afterwards and be like, hey, sorry if that was odd or off or anything. I just want to make sure we're communicating in the same way and have this side conversation after that.
Well, I think that's an excellent idea because the response to that will tell you everything you need to know about that person. If they get snarky with you, then you know
Yeah.
you're dealing with somebody that you're going to have to keep your boundaries solid against as you go forward, right? Otherwise, they will say, "Oh, I'm sorry, they didn't mean to do that," or they'll try to have a real conversation with you, right? And those are the differences that we're looking for.
Yeah. And a lot of us too, I think, are very averse to confrontation. And you kind of hope it'll just go away, but it's my intuition that it just gets worse. You know, what kind of advice could you give to people that, like, maybe they're conflict averse, but they're going to have to step up and defend themselves in some way? Is there a magical wand you can make that a little bit less painful?
I No, I'm not sure that there's a way to make it less painful. I think there's a way for you to be more assertive about who you are and what you believe in, and that's really where I'm coming from. So um, I have created this boundaries course that's based on people strongly aligning their current values with their boundaries and those boundaries that are most important to them, right? A lot of us really don't have good boundaries these days. And I think all that work that you're talking about really starts there, recognizing what boundaries you need to protect and how you can protect them by aligning them with your values. Not your past values. Your values may have changed as you've grown, right? Your current values, the values that you stand on now, becoming hyper aware of those allows you to push back in a way where you can still be polite and still be firm
Hmm.
about who you are. That also transmits to the group, right? That's who you are. And therefore, it gives them some sense of, well, this person's going to stand up for himself. Ryan's just not going to take it if we start poking at him or picking at him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you mess with the bull, you get the horns. It's kind of a good reputation to have in a way professionally.
Yeah. And I think the workplace is getting worse, quite frankly. We have the AI coming in, which is putting pressure on people's jobs, which means that there are fewer jobs in the workplace now. And then there was this huge layoff that we had with federal government employees. So we have all kinds of people out there looking for work, and people don't feel like they have any security at the moment. So there's this push to get rid of people. There's nobody speaking back about the incivility that's happening because we have leadership that is incivility, showing incivility. They're incivil to everybody right on the TV, and that is kind of like a permission that has been given to leaders everywhere to act that way. We look to leadership. Leadership is key to this. We look to leadership to show us how we should behave in society, and that's
Yeah.
missing right now.
And let's talk to leaders now because I think a lot of the listeners of this podcast are leaders in their organization. They're either the founders, they're C-suite. They're guiding and directing people. And the trash always rots from the top down. You know what I mean? So, what are some good things for leadership to maybe be working on proactively to make sure that they're actually kind of be an exemplar of like non-bullying, non-mobbing?
Well, I am a big fan of Robert Sutton's no asshole rule, and it's really very straightforward. Robert Sutton is a professor at Stanford. He says, I'm going to hire you. You have a great resume, but if I find out you're a bully, you're out of here, right? No assholes allowed in this business. But in general, I think policy is a good place to start, but the policy has to have consequences. It has to have real world meaning to it. Otherwise, people won't pay attention to it. And most policies that are written these days are useless, quite frankly. They just say, we don't do this here, and that's about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do with that. Like, how am I going to be protected if I complain? How should I complain? How is an investigation going to be handled? You know, what's going to happen next? What are the consequences? Those are all things that need to be addressed.
Yeah, 100%. Are there any, well, actually, before I get to that question, I am really interested in proactive things that leadership can take because, I love the no asshole rule. That should be written on every single training book, like step one, the way I like to say that to teammates is like, before you try to fix anything, just don't make it worse, you know.
Yes.
Be- because a lot, if you are piling on or mobbing on people, maybe you're thinking in your head, I'm being proactive and trying to solve this problem, but before you do that, you're actually making something much worse. So are there ways that leaders can like inject kindness, kind of take the opposite side of that coin and be proactive to help people actually offer that helping hand? Because the most productive groups and organizations I've been a part of, it's like somebody gets ahead and they bring the hand down for the next person, they help them up, and then they reach up, and it's a very collaborative. Maybe some of us have been lucky enough to be in environments like that, but it's almost intoxicating when people are really there for the mission. They're really there to help and support each other. Is there anything else leaders can do to kind of keep an eye on that and encourage it?
Well, I think leaders can also encourage managers to become coaches because really everybody needs some direction in the workplace. It's not like we come entirely pre-packed for every single job that's out there, right? And even if we do, we need to learn the systems and the processes. And so onboarding is a really critical piece of that. And what I keep hearing is a lot of micromanaging occurring from managers who haven't had proper onboarding. So they're always saying, "Oh, I'll just do it myself,"
Yeah.
What's That's not what a manager should be doing. A manager
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing it themselves. They should be training somebody and helping somebody to learn how to do it so that they feel good at the end of the day. Yay, I learned how to do this, right?
And that frustration, from a manager's perspective, it's like if I see that, I always see failure, from management,
Hmm.
because it's like if the staff doesn't have the template of how to do well at their job, everything they should do at the end of the day should be rewarded because they're executing on a plan. But so many times, yeah, leadership can get frustrated from the squeaky wheel. It's like, boy, every time I turn around, you need something else. Well, that should always be a reflection on the leadership that hasn't, put together the SOPs in a way that, this person can be successful in their job. So maybe a lot of that anger is kind of a misplaced. And like, honestly, it really should be management that's creating an opportunity for them to be successful.
I think that's incredibly important right now, especially since we have AI taking over workflows. So people have to learn new things to actually work with AI. It's not like there aren't benefits out of it, but we can't expect people to just change overnight, right? To change is a process that happens, and it usually happens best if it's done in small steps and if people are prepared for it rather than having it just dumped on them. So there are a lot of things managers and leaders can do to make that process and that change happen more easily for people so they can feel successful because anybody who really wants to be good at their job, wants to feel successful at the end of the day. Yeah, I got this done and I feel good about it and I did a good job, right? We need to reward those things.
Yeah, 100%. I'm thinking too if there's like ways that AI can kind of help some of these situations, because for the people that may be a little bit confrontational, resistant, they don't want to have the conflict. But that doesn't mean that they can't double back and be like, you know what, I'm going to deliver an email, and using AI to say like, hey, I want to make sure this is not aggressive. I want it to be assertive. I want it to include these things, and kind of craft like um, a skillful email or response, or things like that, to help deliver the information in a way that doesn't make it worse, that doesn't make you seem like you're the person instigating, or whatever that may be. It's very delicate with email communication because people can read it certain ways, but maybe with these tools we can be a little bit more skillful with what we're crafting.
I think it's always good to have people look at your emails or to sit on them for a while if you're trying to address something, but really face to face is the way you're going to get the most advancement out of trying to deal with an issue. And so people need to actually learn how to do that. And none of that communication need is never going to go away because there's always going to be conflict in the workplace. And it's not that we can always manage it, but we need to understand what is conflict and what is bullying and separate them. People don't deal with bullying a lot because they can't tell the difference between incivility, conflict, and bullying. And that's part of the problem, too.
Yeah.
We just need to have a better understanding of ourselves and how we operate. Self development and soft skills are going to become more important as technology takes over more of our jobs, too.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're supposed to just like be, wearing robes and playing harps and just hanging out, right? I mean, the robots are taking over. We should be, we should be happy.
Well, they are still machines and they still do make mistakes. And I find it all the time when I run Gemini all the time on my Microsoft if I have questions or to double check my what I'm stating.
Yeah.
But I really think it's people are not going to go away. And if we're really having businesses to serve people, we need to keep that in mind, right? In the end, it's a human that's there buying the product usually. It's not just a machine that's taking over the economy.
Yeah. When you've been tackling this issue for a long time. So culturally, where are we? Are we getting better with workplace bullying, or are we getting worse?
Well, I really think right now things are worse. I think that's because we have leadership that doesn't exemplify American values and a lot of things that we have come to expect in our lives are being taken away. And for example, we were talking about education earlier. We were educated that if we did a good job in school and we worked hard and learned well, we would get a good job. And all of that does not hold true anymore. So things are being turned upside down. So, how do we help people in the workplace deal with this topsy turvy situation that's going on right now with more
Yeah.
and more technology, with people being fired. We need to figure out a better way to help people. And I really think we need to keep in mind that people need another nervous system to talk to. Like, the point is not that AI can't help you find some better ways to communicate, but in fact, we're trying to deal with communicating nervous system to nervous system like you and I are doing at this point. And so we always need to keep that in mind that we're not talking to machines all the time. We are talking to people.
Yeah, it's crucial. It's really interesting too. You said that leadership isn't kind of like following American values. What are those American values that they're missing out on?
Well, I think the fact that we have turned back the page on DEI is really unfortunate. There's a lot more discrimination and harassment going on in the workplace now because of people's diversity. And I think if you watch if you watch the American Revolution by Ken Burns on PBS, he talks about how we have this duplicitous sort of view of what freedom was when we first started out, right? Freedom and liberty was for white people, it wasn't for the slaves. So the slaves actually went and joined the British because they had slavery as illegal. But we've gone forward since that time and tried to create a more equal society based on the concepts of equality, liberty, and fraternity, right? But now we're sort of turning that back where we have a leader who doesn't respect people, a leader who has fired people without any warning, and has taken away DEI and actually made that criminal. Those are the kinds of things that mean we're actually going backwards in our culture right now, instead of going forward and solving the human dilemma, right, of equality and liberty and fraternity.
Yeah, it is a little bit challenging when bullying seems to be very popular at the most powerful man in the world. It
Leadership is
almost,
everything.
yeah,
It
it
really
it really
is.
is. It's a bad look. It's just one way to put
Hmm.
it. And for folks that are like really trying to build kindness into the work they do, it is a little discouraging, to see that all over the place. Hopefully, it's an anomaly, but oftentimes you can kind of see the benefits, of just bullying your way all the way to the top. I mean, the probably the scariest problem with bullying is that it works.
Yes, it is the scariest, but it leaves a trail of bodies behind it, and that's what we're trying to really address here, is that really mostly the best workers are the ones being bullied. They're the ones that are threatening the leaders because they're smart, because they can do the job, because they have forward-thinking views. And bullies don't like that. They just want control and power, really.
Yeah. Do you think it's what percentage of bullies you think are kind of like untreatable narcissists, and what percent are maybe people that have just fallen into bad habits?
That's a really good.
When's a good time to pull the plug? Because an organization like this sounds like the exact opposite of what I enjoy about work. If you spend so much of your life and so much of your talent in work, for me, I want it to be fun, honestly. I want it to be of service. I want it to help people. If I can have some jokes and have a good time, that's what I want. If it gets to the point that there's like weird bullying going on, I mean, it is the exact furthest extent of what I would want. So, when is the time to just pull the plug and be like, I got to get out of here?
Well, if it's keeping you up at night and you have made efforts to really try and solve it and it's not going to be solved, then it's time to pull the plug because unfortunately, very few people have a very strong case for bullying, even though they may have documented well. A lawyer really looks for damages because this is a business decision. If there are damages, how can I win this case, right? Then I can make something for my client and for me. Um, so, good documentation helps this, but just pulling the plug and saying, I can't deal with this anymore is sort of a life saving gesture, right? For
Yeah,
yourself, right?
100%. I love that. And you kind of went through some excruciating bullying. Was there anything positive that came out of that?
Well, of course, my PhD came out of it, and my career came out of it. You know, if I was a financial analyst and a legal assistant before, and I was already interested in workplace bullying because I had seen it go on in law firms, and I thought, it was really a waste of people's time and energy. I called it anti-business behavior. It really is anti-business behavior. I couldn't believe that in a law firm they would allow this stuff to go on. So I went back to school to study it. And when I got bullied, it was like, well, I guess I'm getting my PhD now.
I
So
mean,
I
if you
made
think,
lemonade out of lemons.
yeah, if you think about it, Dr. Nan, it's kind of a superhero origin story. Isn't that how you always the superhero is always born from the villain?
Yeah, well, I'm trying. I have been supporting people for at least 25 years now, and I plan to keep doing it. And I am working right now to pass legislation. There are a number of laws out there. They're not all good or well written, but we are all making efforts to try and get something passed at the state level. And at the federal level, of course, NIOSH has a total worker health program that really identifies workplace bullying as a psychosocial hazard. But of course, under this current administration, we're not going to get that funded. So we need to keep pushing back on particular programs like that because we really need them in the workplace right now.
I'd love to get to know you a little bit outside of fighting bullies. I was doing some research, and it sounds like you like collage and drawing and gardening, and it happens to be spring. We're about midway through May right now. So, what's your garden look like right now?
It's full of onions and chard and bok choy.
Nice.
So
Spring
yeah,
crop.
yeah, and I spend some time in my garden every day because it keeps me grounded. Because this work is traumatizing. You're
Yeah.
dealing with people who are suffering from trauma, so you really need some grounding techniques and some breathing exercises, to help you through it. Because sometimes I am still triggered by what people tell me. It's um, what happens out there is horrible. How people are treated. We don't deserve this in the workplace. Like you said, we want to be of service, right? We want to feel successful. We want that collaboration that really is the spice of life when you work with people. Such great things can come out of collaboration.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we're lucky to have you out there fighting the good fight. I was checking out your LinkedIn, and it said you recently watched the black and white version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes, I think that as well as gaslighting. You can see those on archive.org. Those are really instructional films, even though they are old, they really give us an understanding of what we're dealing with in the workplace today.
Yeah, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Is that kind of a metaphor for the most nightmarish boss you could ever have?
Well, I just ended up dealing with somebody like that, somebody who acted like there are a lot of toxic allies in the anti-bullying movement, and so people act like they're there, and then when money comes into play, that's like the mask falls off and there's somebody else, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a lot like me before dinner and after dinner. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you're not quite that bad.
Depends if I got my yoga in for the day. Amazing. Talk to me a little bit about drawing. What do you like to draw?
Oh, I draw what I call these metaphor figures that I use for my training. So they're really just they're not really stick figures, but they're like drawing figures that I color blue so that no matter what ethnicity you are, you can relate to what's going on in them. So um, it's just a way of communicating with people and trying to
Yeah.
keep that DEI thing going that some people are trying to get rid of, right?
Yeah. And this is a very novel business and career that you've created for yourself, which takes a lot of bravery. I'd love to learn a little bit about your family and how they've supported you on your journey.
Well, my immediate family, my husband has supported me the whole way. We come from a similar background. He and I don't have particularly good parents. My parents were very narcissistic, and they didn't believe that a woman should go to college or should have a career. And of course, I didn't believe with that at all because I heard John F. Kennedy Jr. say on television that all students, all men and women should go to college, right? And I just, as a young child, I took that to heart. And at 7 years old, I decided that's what I wanted to do. So it took me a long time to get there, but I actually took that one off my bucket list.
Amazing. All the way through, too.
Yeah, all the way through. I thought, well, at least I'll get a master's, but of course the universe said, nope, you're going to go all the way.
You're not done yet.
You're
You
not
got
done
this.
yet. Yeah.
Amazing. We love giving shout outs to charitable organizations. Do you have any favorite nonprofits or, how do you like to give back to the community?
Well, I'm a captain in my neighborhood, so I try to keep my neighborhood safe and I organize them. And I also moderate a site called Workplace Bullying Safe Harbor that I was started by Dr. Gary Namey. He's in retirement now, so I took that over and I facilitate and moderate there. I provide resources for people because when you're in the middle of being bullied, you can't think like, well, I need to find an attorney. How am I going to do that, right? So I have some links for people to do that. I have links to trauma-informed therapists, and I try to write about trauma a lot and provide trauma exercises on the site so people can distance themselves from what's happening to them in the workplace at that moment.
Yeah, amazing. We're ready for the lightning round. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Oh, I hope so.
If you could have a conversation like this, maybe interview somebody historic or somebody that's around right now, who would it be?
I found this to be a really hard question because I think there's a lot of people I'd like to talk to right now, like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'd love to talk to them about getting this workplace bullying law passed. But I also like to talk to Eleanor Roosevelt because
Ooh,
she was really a proactive activist for human rights. And this is really a human rights issue. And I'd really love to talk to her about it and see what her perspective is on it and how she would solve this issue.
I love that. Who are some other women leaders that inspire or that you admire?
Well, I admire Kamala Harris, but of course she grew up in my neighborhood in Berkeley, right? I'm in Berkeley
Cool.
now, and I would love to have a conversation with her also.
I love it. If you could start your career over again, would you do anything differently?
I don't think I could because I really wasn't in control of this career as it was, you know. I started out doing bookkeeping and being a paralegal, and then I just got pushed this way. And
Yeah,
every time I've tried to go somewhere else since, the universe keeps pushing me back this way. So here I am.
amazing. Throughout the course of your career as a whole, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned?
I that deep listening is important, no matter what work you do.
I love that. It's such an undervalued skill, you know? And part of the reason why I really enjoyed this conversation today is I know as kind of like a consultant and a therapist that you listen a lot. So it was great to give you the floor and really be able to learn from you.
Well, thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate this.
Yeah,
I just want to say that, people everywhere want to be heard. And that's really what happens with people who are bullied. They aren't heard. People don't believe it's going on. And so that's what I try to do. I try to listen and hear their story, and I don't doubt it.
love it. And one more thing that I'd love to hear from you. Um, if you had a billboard downtown Berkeley, what would it say?
It would say, write your congressperson and tell them to remove the words with malice from the definition in the California codes. Because it's a legal definition that has to do with pre-publication. It's not the common law definition of with malice. And right now, it just wipes out the meaning of the definition for abusive conduct. So that's the billboard I would put up. I have a
Love it.
petition right now that I'm starting on that very issue.
Remove with malice. Is that because malice becomes too hard and too vague to pin down?
No, it's because it's a legal definition. We're not creating common law around this idea of with malice, which is what we think of when we get bullied. The legal definition of with malice has a background of pre-publication of defaming and libelous statements, and that never happens in bullying. Nobody ever has pre-publication. You may occasionally see that somebody's recorded in a one-party consent state that they've recorded the conversation with their bully, but that's very rare, and mostly people get sued on that for wiretapping.
Hmm.
So unless you know you're in a one-party state, don't do it.
Don't do
Don't do
it.
it.
Wise words. Dr. Nan, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. If people want to learn more about your work, they can check out essentialbusinessbehaviors.com. And where's the best place to connect with you personally online?
Uh, if you go to discourse group Safe Harbor, then or LinkedIn, you could ask for a link to get into Safe Harbor. If you come to LinkedIn and find my space and send me a message, I will connect with you.
Amazing. Dr. Nan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate this conversation.